Welcome all, and thank you so much for joining us today. My name is Miles, and I'm the head of marketing here at Hospitable. Today, we are all here for a Hospitable Masterclass, where we invite industry experts to share their expertise with our short-term rental hosting audience. For those of you who don't know what Hospitable does, Hospitable gives short-term rental hosts their valuable time back. Founded in 2016, we make short-term hosting trivial for over 9,000 customers with tools such as AI-powered automated messaging, automated task scheduling for your team, a synchronized calendar to prevent double bookings across Airbnb, VRBO, Booking.com, and your direct booking website, and a centralized inbox to respond to all of your guests across different channels in one place. You can find out more about us at hospitable.com. Today, though, we are joined by Patrick, Senior Director of Customer Experience at NoiseAware, who will be helping us to discuss how to avoid parties at your property, and specifically how property monitoring can prevent incidents from occurring. Patrick, so great to have you with us today. How about we start things off with a little introduction of yourself and NoiseAware?
Miles, thank you for the introduction. Really happy to be here. I'm really enjoying working with Hospitable. My name's Patrick. I've been working with NoiseAware for about 6 years. I've been lucky enough to install NoiseAware in over 1,500 properties myself, so I've seen a lot of vacation rentals across the country. NoiseAware is chiefly concerned with helping you regulate noise at your properties, giving you objective data that helps you protect your properties, profits, and peace of mind. Excited to talk more about it here, Miles.
Sweet. Thank you very much, Patrick. And apologies, folks. We did have an issue with the chat there at the start, but it looks like the chat function is working again. So feel free to introduce yourselves in the chat and let us know where you're joining from. But before we get started, I do want to just point out a couple of housekeeping notes. So today's session will be recorded. If you haven't already got a notification for that, we are recording. And we'll start today's webinar with some questions from myself, and then we'll move into some Q&A from the audience. Feel free to use the chat function to say hello, but please use the Q&A function at the bottom of your screen to submit your questions for Patrick. You can also use the upvote function to help us prioritize which of those questions get answered first. Brian from Hospitable Sales Team is also joining us today. He's assisting by monitoring the chat and keeping an eye on that Q&A for those questions as they come up. So without further ado, let's get things started, Patrick. So to kick things off, why should hosts consider installing property management devices?
There's a lot of technology out there that's going to help you get the highest rates, get the highest occupancy, and help you vet your guests. And there's so much you can do after the property. People might book your property months in advance or spend time researching it, but there's really only so much insight you can get during the stay in that short little window. Devices like locks, like thermostats, like noise monitoring devices, they're going to give you insights of what's going on at the property in real time, in between check-in and check-out. And this is what helps for your distributed hotel, for your distributed hospitality environment. This really helps you optimize or even fully automate your front desk and your security staff.
Okay, awesome. And exactly what devices do NoiseAware provide?
NoiseAware provides, you can see behind me, an indoor and outdoor sensor. And those go to an application that you can view on your phone or on your laptop. So NoiseAware is constantly going to be reporting on how loud it's been on average for the last few minutes, looking for distinct patterns of noise. Once it gets to about 10 minutes above your chosen threshold, that's where we think it's significant and worth notifying the guest about. You're able to set all the rules, all the noise thresholds, and we're able to help you, automate workflows based on when those rules are violated.
Great. So, I think the key thing to call out there, then, it's not like it just gets triggered with a clapper light. It's not a, one loud noise sets it off. There's a bit more consistency there, right?
Definitely. I think that's a great question, Miles. And it's usually in a lot of the support calls or times I've gotten to talk to our customers when they first open our product, that immediate experience when they first take it out of the box, they want to get that alert right away. What happens when guests are too loud? Can I clap at it? Can I yell at it? And it can be surprisingly hard to trigger an alert. That's because our microphone is taking thousands of samples every single minute. We're looking for really dense, really high levels of noise that are hard to mimic with just a Bluetooth speaker or just music coming out of your phone. If you really want to give it a go, I encourage, having some friends over, cranking up the sound system, or really making it loud enough, and for more than just a couple minutes, to really get the full feel of how much we're measuring noise and just the types of events that we're looking for and helping you prevent at your properties.
Nice. I can see a great marketing campaign for you there, getting people to test that out for you and putting a hashtag around that. That's going to be some good TikToks of people trying to, rig the system.
Definitely. Anyone who's interested in adding any content, definitely get in contact with me, and I'd be happy to send you a sensor and get some videos.
Awesome. So, around that, the device has to be kind of listening quite a lot then to be picking up this noise and to be making sure it's trying to sense the right thing. So surely you must sometimes get questions around privacy. Does the guest or the host need to be concerned around that at all?
That is a really good question, and a question we surprisingly don't get enough. Security is really, really important to us, as well as privacy. We do 100% of calculations on the noise in your environment locally on the device. The device is not capable of transmitting audio files of any kind. So, we're not taking snippets of sound, sending it to a server, analyzing what type of sound it is. Because when you do that and when you transmit these audio files, you're taking a risk of what was recorded, where it could be used later, what's happened. We do all the calculations locally on the device. So it's not even capable of sending your audio. It's just sending a single packet of data once a minute. That's really smaller than the first email that was ever sent, in the 80s over the internet. It's just telling how loud it's been and some basic connectivity stats in text format.
Great. I mean, that sounds pretty reassuring to hear, because I could imagine some guests, being concerned about the device and wondering what it does pick up. We all know how CCTV works, and that's kind of clear, but this is, for a lot of people, probably quite a new device.
Definitely. We've had guests who've got messaged, who's found our website, and we're happy to explain to them we are privacy safe. And really, we're just trying to make their stay, let them know where the limit is, and just remind them of the neighborhood and the environment they're in. Maybe it is a weekday, or maybe it is an area where kids are going to school the following day. And we're just trying to make it a more sustainable place to live and to continue to operate.
Awesome. Sounds good. So I'm just going to take a pause there and just remind the audience, if you've got any questions for Patrick, please do feel free to drop them in the Q&A. We'll make sure to get to those at the end of the session. That's just a reminder there for you folks. So moving on, Patrick, say there's been an event at my property. It's picked up some substantial noise for, a decent amount of period, a decent amount of time. What's my next steps? I suspect that there's been a party. What can I do with that data? What can I do with that information? How do I kind of proceed with, Airbnb or the guests themselves?
Yeah, we have a great program that the majority of our professional hosts are taking advantage of, called Auto Resolve. And Auto Resolve allows you to connect your reservations through your property management system like Hospitable. And it allows us to send a text message directly to the guest whenever they've crossed that threshold for 10 minutes. It can send a follow-up just 10 minutes after that. And if that's not resolved, you will get an escalation message telling you the timestamps of the first two messages that were sent, the guest's name and contact information. And at that point, I'd recommend either a drive-by or just a simple call to the guest, see what's going on. You want to make sure that their stay is going well. And with that automation, I think it greatly reduces the workflow and the reliance on your team. These things tend to not come up during normal business hours. They're usually late at night, on weekends, or even during the week. And I think having that automation really helps. If you don't have it, or if you want to use NoiseAware for the first time, getting that alert for 10 minutes, it's not necessarily a cause for alarm, but I think it is worth giving just gentle reminder of house rules to the guest. letting them know you're aware of the elevated noise, and seeing if there's anything you can do to offset it. And just that simple reminder, 1 or 2 times, it's going to resolve the vast majority of incidents. And that's why we've chosen to automate just those first 2 steps. And hopefully you don't have to get involved too much, but when you do, you can be ready.
That's great. Yeah, I quite like that. The fact that you're automating a bunch of those steps. So, it's not just a device that sits there and listens. You're kind of helping with some more parts of the process. So that's great to hear. So in terms of some of the capabilities of the devices, it's more than just indoor monitoring, right? It's outdoor as well. What are some of the things that that outdoor monitoring is for? Where do you see the use cases for that?
So we have an indoor and an outdoor monitor. The indoor monitor is going to connect to your router. It's going to serve as your hub. It's also going to be able to count the number of devices in your property and track occupancy. And it's what's going to connect your outdoor monitor. The outdoor monitor is battery powered. It is waterproof and IP64 rated. So it's been submerged over 10 feet underwater in testing. And it's going to tell you how loud things are outside. Now, some people's first reaction may be to put this on a property line. That's not exactly what we recommend. We think you should put it in an activity zone, in a place where your guests are likely to hang out. If you have a patio, or you have a pergola, or you have an area with lots of chairs or a fire pit, first, I think outside of NoiseAware, when you look at your backyard and you look at those seating areas, making sure you don't have one that's right against your neighbor's master bedroom. Kind of bringing those things as close to the property as you can, and then measuring noise at those locations where people are likely to congregate. That's going to help you keep things under control, and also help you, really just know when guests are getting out of hand, knowing when guests are going over the limit, instead of having to be a hall monitor and go tit for tat on every little bit. So it really gives you freedom. It allows you to, that bachelor party that you might not want to rent to. Now, maybe if you've got NoiseAware, you've got something that you're able to keep an eye on a property, you're like, hey, we can allow that listing. We can allow these types of bookings, and we'll be able to control what's going on.
Great. So you kind of touched there on, where you install the device being quite important. And that seems like quite a critical factor. In terms of, the installation process, sorry, mince my words there. Do you help with, the configuring of the setup of where these devices go, or do you actually help with the installation themselves?
So we do have an installation team, but they're typically not handling any installations below at least 10 properties. The device is extremely easy to set up. It's really similar to setting up a Roku or a Chromecast or any IoT device like that. Choosing the location is definitely important. We recommend having them in common areas, in areas where guests are likely to hang out, and having it at a pretty high level, so that when just having a pretty high level, so when guests have totally crossed that threshold. So we've got support team as well that can help you get everything installed, and we're happy to help as well.
Sweet. Sounds good. No worries for the dog barking, which I think I picked up in the background. I'm probably going to have it from my camera and from my audio at some point soon. Cool. So I did have just 1 or 2 more questions before we take questions from the audience. We've got a few trickling in now. Just one final reminder. If you do have any questions for us, folks, please drop them in the Q&A. We will get to them very shortly. So one other thing, 2 other things I was going to ask you, Patrick. So first off, occupancy tracking. I think that's something that you deal with as well. I'd love to get a bit more detail on that as well.
Definitely. It's something we've released in the last year. It's something our devices have had the capability for quite some time. So if you have a device with us and you don't know, this is a feature we've released, you can enable it on your dashboard. And the first 30 days you have it enabled, we're establishing a baseline. What are the typical number of devices we see over this 30-day period? And we look for extreme outliers where that device count has gone rapidly above what we usually expect. Now, that can happen for a number of reasons. If a device is not connected to your Wi-Fi or it's an iPhone, that device might multiply. Getting an exact device count is really, really difficult, and just has so many variables that are changing constantly. And we can't give you, there's 27 devices and there's 14 people. But we can tell you, this is a lot more devices than we've seen here before. And you're going to look at it in the context side by side with your noise data, indoors and outdoors. So you have a really good idea of what's going on with the property.
Great. So yeah, it sounds like the different devices will work in tandem to kind of really give you that full picture of what's happening at your property.
Exactly.
Cool. So one last question before we move on to the audience's questions. And this is actually from Brian, our sales rep. He also has a couple of properties himself, and he wants to just double check, are they dependent on a stable network, the devices? Will they work in slightly more remote conditions?
So you do need a wireless network to make them work. The indoor sensor is plugged in, and we do everything we can to keep it connected. The closer you are to the router, the more stable the connection, like the more data you are going to get. But that indoor sensor is going to constantly work to get online if you've got signal going in and out. I know the outdoor sensor, it is battery powered, and as it searches for better signal, the battery may drain a bit faster in those regions. Just the intermittent connectivity may limit it, but definitely support those areas, and definitely recommend having something in those areas, because it's that much further for you to drive, that much harder for you to get out there. And if you've got a lot of land, maybe you can set that limit extremely high, but still know when something's going on.
Perfect. That makes a lot of sense. Great. Well, thank you very much, Patrick. Those are the questions from me. We're going to move on to the audience questions now. We've got a good few coming through now. So the first one is from Stefan. So he's asking about the device being plugged in. If the device is plugged into the socket, guests will have questions what the device does. So around it, is it for surveillance? I think we kind of touched upon that around privacy concerns and how you deal with that. And then his second question was around can the device just be unplugged? I think you touched on that with batteries, but maybe you can elaborate that a bit more.
Definitely. So we do have some suggested guestbook language on our website. We do recommend disclosing what NoiseAware is. In some places there may be signage. I've even seen neighbors of short-term rentals put up signage about how loud they're allowed to be, or whether or not short-term rentals are permitted in that specific area. Sometimes letting them know that there may be legislation requiring it, or letting them know that this neighborhood is sensitive, and we just want to let you know when you have crossed that level that we will send you a text. It's a 100% privacy safe device. And we do have some great language that would help just disclose it in a manner that is acceptable to the guests. And if it's someone that's refusing to book it or anything like that, I've heard other hosts say that it's a great deterrent for keeping away people that they otherwise might have been worried about. Regarding unplugging it, it has these two screw holes right here, and one of these two screw holes is going to line up with about 99% of the outlets in the United States. If you have those Decora outlets, it'll be the top. The older outlets, it'll be that center one, so you are able to screw it in. And it also has a tamper circuit in case it is removed. You can get an alert letting you know that that device has been unplugged. But you would no longer have data. You'd have data, up to that minute and beyond. And so, if it does happen at night in the middle of a party, likely you know what's going on. If it happens right when they check in, that might be something to be concerned about. If you have someone that checks into your property and immediately unplugs the router, or just immediately unplugs a number of devices, that might be worth a drive-by just to get a better feel for that tenant's plans for your property.
Yeah, that alert would seem like a red alert to me, a red flag, if you will, something to go and check out for sure. So we got another question here. This is from an anonymous attendee, so not sure their name, but they asked, can it determine if the noise is from landscapers mowing the lawn, weeding, or using a leaf blower, for example?
So if you've got landscapers that come at a set time. You can set your quiet hours to avoid getting alerts on there, but we are a privacy safe device. So all the calculations are done locally on that device. It's an outdoor device, it's battery powered. There's only so many, calculations you're gonna be able to get out of that device to determine all the different possible sound types. We've optimized for privacy, and we cannot, send those recordings or analyze to that degree. But based on time landscapers come, or even having quiet hours that start after 6 or 7 p.m. when honestly someone shouldn't be using those at that time, and if they are, I think it is actually a violation of noise. But we are not able to distinguish between those types of things.
That makes sense. I mean, there's only so much you can, differentiate between and pick up, obviously. Cool. Thank you for that, Patrick. So the next question I've got here is from another anonymous attendee. So it's just asking around integrations. So specifically the questions about integration with other devices. So for example, when an event triggers, can you link to other camera systems like Ring, Arlo, or Blink?
We don't have any other direct integrations with companies. I've heard from a number of our users that as soon as they get an alert, one of the first things they'll do is check their cameras. I know like cameras typically tend to send a really high number of alerts, and we typically send a lot less, so it helps them kind of know when to look. We do have integrations, or we're even able to ingest reports of your reservations so that we can get messages directly to guests. But that is the majority of the integrations we're currently offering, mostly focused around guest messaging.
That makes sense. And I know that the obvious question here is probably from some of our audience members that are already using Hospitable or already using NoiseAware is there a integration with Hospitable at the moment? I know the answer to this, but maybe Patrick, you can share a little bit more information.
Yeah, so we don't have a direct integration with Hospitable. I know they have a great guest messaging platform, and we would love to be a part of that and to grow there. If you have Hospitable, you are able to get direct guest messaging. We have, one messaging integration partner that offers it, and we also are able to just take a report from Hospitable and upload it to our system on a daily basis so that the guests do get the automated messages. But I think more to come there.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's certainly something that I know your product team has flagged to us. And, we discussed before this call, get some data to understand how we could work together. So, never say never. I think it's something that we can flag with our product team as well. And we can talk further about a possible integration down the line for sure. Awesome. Thank you. So the next question was, so there's actually one in the chat that actually came in a few minutes ago. I don't want to miss it. So the question is around pricing. So just trying to understand, is it price for the device itself and then maybe a monthly subscription for the service? How does that work exactly?
Yeah, so on our website, it's $180 for the first year. And that's going to include the first year service as well as your indoor sensor. Adding the outdoor sensor is a one-time charge of $99. We do have more competitive rates as you add more than 10 properties, and we are flexible in terms of paying for the device up front or stretching it over like a monthly payment plan as well.
Great. Okay, that makes sense. Hopefully that's clear to the person that asked that. I think that was Betty. Okay, next up, question from Yin. In a setting of a community with a majority of houses are short-term rentals, if our guests complain about noise in the neighbor's house, what is the best approach for that? The HOA is mostly not accessible and not helpful.
That is a great question. I'm assuming that this is not a property that you're also managing, and it's probably a number of different property managers operating within the same HOA. I think now, and really as long as I've been in the short-term rental industry, advocacy is extremely powerful, and it always starts at the smallest local level. I think if you can find a number of property managers in your community who you think are doing it the right way, I would encourage you to advocate for rules that are either, a maximum noise limit, or having something like NoiseAware, having any type of rules that you believe make your community a better place, that help you regulate not only who you have at your property, but who's at the neighboring properties that may affect either your reputation or your guests' experience. So I really think advocacy, getting together with other people in your neighborhood, trying to push people who aren't taking responsibility out, and trying to demonstrate to the HOA that you're a leader in this regard. I don't think there's other than calling the person who manages that property that night, or I probably wouldn't recommend going over and talking to someone else's guests or anything like that. I mean, it's more of a long-term solution. In the moment, it's tough.
That's fair. Yeah. That sounds like an area where maybe you do already, but potentially there's some good resources that NoiseAware could put out there to help with that. I don't know if you do have anything around that at all.
Yeah, we do have a number of flyers. We've worked with Good Neighbor Technology and Rent Responsibly as well, who've got some excellent resources just around advocacy. But we have how NoiseAware works for you in a short-term rental on a flyer, and you hand in those flyers to your HOA, showing you use them, showing, hey, I don't know what you've heard about how short-term rentals are doing in this HOA, but we take it really seriously. We're really professional. We use this technology, and if you hear complaints, they're not us, and let us know how we can be helpful to you, just to make sure you're able to continue to operate there, and maybe even expand, and convince that homeowner that you might have been a better property manager for them.
Great. And sorry, is that flyer accessible for everyone? Is that specifically for NoiseAware customers? So
right now, it's something that we've printed out and passed out at trade shows. I am not sure where it exists. Let me get back on that, Miles.
Cool. And yeah, maybe that's something that we can share in the YouTube link after we've put this live, after we put it up on YouTube. Cool. Thanks for that. Thank you, Yin, for that question. Hopefully that's answered it. Feel free to follow up with any other questions if you want to elaborate a bit further. So the next question comes from Roberto. So this is another kind of integration question. So any plans to incorporate a StayFi type Wi-Fi gateway functionality into the NoiseAware platform? So not really an integration, sorry, just kind of doing something similar to what StayFi do.
So our current indoor device does have low frequency, long range signal that our outdoor sensor connects to. We've not currently considered Wi-Fi, but hard to say we would never do it. What I can say is, I like what StayFi does, and I love to see increased professionalization of Wi-Fi at short-term rentals. I think it's critical, not just for NoiseAware, but for your locks, for your guest experience. As more and more people are working remotely, your guests are going to have to rely on the Wi-Fi at your property. I think it's critically important, and it's hard where your homeowners might pay the Wi-Fi bill and you might not have control over it. But the more control we can take of it, the more we can just professionalize that experience, maybe get closer to a hotel where we've got a guest specific network. We've got, our IoT devices on their own dedicated network, and just, simple IoT best practices like that, I think really go a long way. I'd love to be an advocate for it. I'd love to put it, but we don't have any aspirations currently to come out with any type of router right now.
Okay, great. Thank you very much, Patrick. So just moving on to the next question, and this is a good one. So this is kind of bringing us back to the guest messaging side of things. Maybe we can just delve a little deeper on that. So the question from the anonymous attendee is, the message that is sent to the guest, does it come through the Airbnb platform, presuming that the guest booked via Airbnb, or does it go directly to the guest's phone number?
Right now, the majority of integrations go directly to the guest phone number. And I know that's a question we've gotten. And for Hospitable's messaging platform, in that case, would it be that if they message through Airbnb, it would go directly back to them through that?
Yeah, that's correct. So for Hospitable's messaging, yeah, it goes back via the platform that they use. So yeah, it would appear as if it was a message sent on Airbnb itself. Yeah.
That's awesome. And we want to. One of the reasons we really want to get this integration rolling with Hospitable is for features like that. We don't have it right now. It does go directly to the guest's phone number. We do think that is more top of mind, more accessible, but we also recognize how important it is just to manage channels of communication you have with your guests, and we want to work to have more integrations that work that way. But currently, it's mostly just to the guest phone number.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So on the messaging as well, how much customization is there on that messaging at the moment? Is it very much a you have alerted us because of a noise, please desist, or is there the ability to kind of customize that a little bit to your own tone of voice?
So you can customize and add your company's name, but beyond adding the company's name in just the most basic integration, it's the only customization available. However, we do have an open API. And if you've got a messaging platform that's just a lot more robust, you are able to use that open API and integrate with it. But just the stock features we have available only allow you to add your company's name to that guest message.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. So I mean, on the messaging side of things, we touched on Hospitable before. We're not currently integrated, but what are some of the best practices you can think of for Hospitable hosts that want to use NoiseAware? We're not currently integrated, but maybe we should be doing some kind of preemptive messaging before a guest checks in to alert them of the system, something like that. What are some of your tips there?
Definitely. So I'd recommend getting NoiseAware and getting it set up, with just stable connectivity, having it in one indoor, one outdoor sensor in your common areas. And then I'd highly recommend getting an automation in place where you can automate those first or second guest messages. That's going to, limit the number of alerts you get by over 90%. From there, I think it is about having house rules in place, making sure that people are aware of the quiet hours in your community, making sure that you've got your property set up in a way, maybe you've got speakers outside or you've got entertaining areas outside that are just, you've thought about how that sound is going to travel to your neighbors' properties, and you tried to optimize where people would hang out at your property. And also, if you're getting a lot of parties or you're having a lot of issues, it can make sense to double check your listing. What type of people are you attracting? What type of guests do you have? And if you are in an area where there's partiers, that happens, but just kind of know where you're at and be prepared and know what to expect.
Great. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Great. Thank you, Patrick. So one other question that I was going to ask you was around you have multiple devices. What's kind of the recommended? I know it's difficult. It probably depends on the size of property, but what's the kind of typical setup you recommend? Is it a device per room? Is it just in one of those hotspot locations? What do you kind of typically recommend to a new customer?
This is it's a great question, and sometimes people with really big homes or people with really nosy neighbors, they have an idea of how they want to set it up with tons of sensors. I think one indoor and one outdoor sensor is going to catch the vast majority of parties, regardless of property size. If you get it at, an area where, like the main entertaining area of your property, where it opens to the outside, or the main entertaining area of your outdoor, that's going to catch the vast majority of instances. And the thing about parties and the thing about a large property is, like, you really do need to have quite a few people. And noise is logarithmic. So, 90 decibels is 10 times louder than 80, which is 10 times louder than 70. So as you move up the scale, that noise just travels really far. So the types of instances that you're catching, in addition to like our ability to track the number of devices, you're going to know if there's a major incident, if there's a major party, which is a small number of devices. If you do want to add more, I highly recommend, understanding your home's Wi-Fi network. Setting up Wi-Fi in large homes can be complicated, and you want to know exactly how it works, exactly where your access points are. But sometimes people are afraid of, like, am I going to miss something? Do I not have enough? But really getting one indoor and one outdoor in the core areas of your home are going to catch the vast majority of situations. And if you have larger properties, definitely you can add. I've seen 40, 50 bedroom houses on Airbnb, but I've also seen plenty of beautiful 1 to 2 bedrooms as well.
Nice. And on those, you talk about almost testing out the range of your Wi-Fi. Do you have any recommendations there for, checking that you do have good Wi-Fi signal for the devices, or is there some kind of built-in check there?
We do report on signal strength, and while you're setting it up, we'll rate it as good, okay, or poor. Good and okay, you should totally be fine during the setup process. But I definitely, I think it's really important for people just to understand the Wi-Fi network of all their homes. Typically, a home router that you get from AT&T, it's going to cover 1,500, 2,000 square feet comfortably. But as you get bigger, or if you get a house with multiple stories, or you have an elevator shaft, or things like that, all those things throw off your connectivity. And just having a good understanding of that, I think that's one of the biggest areas where I just see a lot of differences between how different people manage Wi-Fi and what property managers take responsibility for it versus what kind of leave it to the chance or to the homeowners.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Okay. So folks, if you've got any more questions, feel free to ping them in the Q&A. We're out of questions so far. I do have one more question for you though, Patrick. Kind of want to give you an opportunity to tell us a bit more about 2023 for NoiseAware. What's some of the things in the pipeline? I know you folks are very busy. What are some of the things that we got to look out for from you folks?
Yeah, we're really, really excited for 2023. We've had auto resolve, the ability to message guests directly for a couple of years, but we've started to offer it to a lot more property management systems, and we've started to see, way more of our customers opt into it every single month. We want to see the majority of our customers continue to opt into that. We want to see more of them. More integrations available for us. We'd love to get something like an integration with Hospitable. We've also released that crowd control feature, and we'd like to see that more adopted, see more hosts use that. And we've definitely got some other things coming that not able to announce just yet. But I think integrations, crowd control, and just having more people using automated guest messages are the big things.
Cool, good stuff. Yeah, I don't want to push you to reveal any trade secrets there, don't worry. So Patricia just asked a question, just checking that we're recording this. Yes, Patricia, we are recording. We will send the recording out to everyone post-session, and it will also be available on Hospitable's YouTube channel. But Patricia, feel free to jump in if there's anything in particular you want to ask us. We have Patrick here for a little longer, so everyone feel free to ping your questions our way, and we'll try to answer them live rather than having to answer them offline. So I think one more question I was going to ask Patrick was around availability. You touched upon some standards there for the US market. Are you guys exclusively US focused?
Right now, that is the majority of our focus. We do have some sensors available for United Kingdom, Australia, as well as the EU plug types. We are looking to work with just like a few larger property managers. It is still something we're in a beta phase for. So right now it's just available in the 10 plus side, but we're definitely looking to expand and to offer it to more people across the globe.
Awesome, that sounds good. And if we do want to, learn a bit more about NoiseAware, are you able to, let us know whereabouts we need to head for that more information? Shout out your website, shout out your social channels. Yeah,
so noiseaware.com is where you can learn a lot more about what we do. We've got an excellent blog. We focus a lot on advocacy and tips for short-term rental hosts. We're definitely active on LinkedIn, I believe Instagram as well. I'm not super well versed in social media, but I believe at least those two channels. I think Twitter as well.
Okay, we'll do some searching afterwards, and we'll make sure to tag the appropriate channels in the YouTube video too as well, so no one misses that. So Patricia's joined late, and she's obviously going to watch the recording back later. But I think for everyone here, because I think we had a couple of late joiners, can you give us the elevator pitch of NoiseAware, the devices you provide, and how they work, just to kind of help wrap up the session here for us?
Definitely. So NoiseAware sells indoor and outdoor noise sensors. You can see behind me in the image. Those indoor and outdoor sensors are online 24/7 and reporting live the noise levels every single minute. Those noise levels report out to a mobile app here, as well as a website dashboard. And within NoiseAware, you're able to set rules over what the threshold would be at any certain hour. And whenever those rules are crossed, you can either get notifications or automate messages directly to guests, reminding them of house rules. If it gets to an escalated situation where that noise is continued for more than 20 or 30 minutes after the guests have been messaged, we then escalate to you and definitely provide resources for how to handle that moving forward.
Perfect. Thank you very much. Patricia, I hope that helps as a nice recap, and for anyone else that joined us a little bit late. So I think, Patrick, unless there's anything else that you want to add, I think maybe now's a good time to wrap things up. How's that sound?
Sounds good to me. I've really enjoyed this, Miles. I really, we have a lot of customers working with Hospitable. It's great to get to know you a little better, and I'm really thankful.
Awesome. Thank you, Patrick. So thank you everyone for joining us today. Thank you everyone for being an active audience and sending us your question. If you enjoyed today's event, stay tuned to our social media accounts and our event emails. The date and time of our next Hospitable Masterclass will officially be launched soon. One thing I can tell you now, though, is that it will be with Damien Sheridan, founder and director of the Book Direct Show and Scale Rental Show. Damien will be sharing his tips and tricks to get repeat direct bookings for your short-term rentals. So that's all from us today, folks. Thanks again, everyone, for joining. Thanks especially to Patrick. And goodbye for now. Thanks, folks.